On Christmas Eve, they took away my chair and put a chrome trash can in its place. "It's a joke," they said, laughing. But what happened next changed everything forever. I never imagined a mother's love could transform into something as cold as the metal of that bin. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if you, for even a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me keep letting this out. It was Christmas Eve 2023 in Los Angeles, and I had spent 3 weeks preparing every detail of that dinner. I had wrapped the gifts with the golden paper I bought at a specialty craft store downtown, the kind they loved because it shimmered under the tree lights. My 68-year-old hands trembled slightly as I folded each corner with precision, imagining the smiles of my grandchildren as they saw their names written in my careful script. I got up at 5 in the morning to prepare the family's classic dry-aged prime rib roast, the recipe it had taken me 40 years to perfect. The aroma of rosemary and garlic filled my small apartment in Los Feliz, blending with the smell of quality, bittersweet chocolate melting slowly in the slow cooker. Every movement was a ritual of love, every ingredient a promise that this Christmas would be different, that my family would finally see everything I had sacrificed for them over the decades. I tucked the manila envelope containing the documents for my real estate portfolio into my handbag. 3 rental properties in Beverly Hills, and a house in Santa Monica that I'd bought with a lifetime of savings. The capital I had accumulated working double shifts as a nurse at City General Hospital, the money I had wisely invested in properties when it was still possible to buy centrally located assets. My modest but solid fortune, built dollar by dollar, dime by dime, over 40 years of silent sacrifice. I put on my best dress, the navy blue one I had bought at Nordstrom for my granddaughter's wedding last year, and the pearl necklace that was the last gift from my late husband, Robert. In the hall mirror, I saw an elegant older woman, with her hair freshly styled at the corner salon, and her hands soft from the almond cream I applied every night before bed. The taxi dropped me off in front of my elder son David's residence in Bel Air, a 2-story house with a front lawn where manicured purple hydrangeas grew. The same house whose down payment I had paid 5 years ago when he was going through financial difficulties with his import business. I remembered that night when he came to my apartment with tears in his eyes, pleading with me to help him, because if he didn't pay the bank in a week, he would lose everything. "Mom, you have investments, you have assets. I'll pay you back in 6 months, I swear on my children." 5 years had passed, and he never returned a single dime of the $50,000 I pulled from my bank yields. I rang the doorbell with an expectant smile. I heard the shouts of my grandchildren inside, voices I had recognized since they were babies, laughter that had been my only solace during the loneliest years of my widowhood. The door opened and Sarah, my daughter-in-law, appeared with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't exactly hostility, but it wasn't the warmth I expected on Christmas Eve either. "Oh, Eleanor, you're here early," she said without hugging me, holding the door ajar as if hesitating to let me in. "We're still getting everything set up for dinner. I thought we could spend some time together before the others arrived," I replied, holding up the bags with the gifts. "Plus, I brought the prime rib roast you all love so much." Sarah looked at the bags with a strange expression, as if I had brought something inappropriate. "Oh, the roast. Well, we already had the dinner catered from a fancy local chain, you know. We didn't want you to go to any trouble." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Catered food instead of the dinner I had prepared with so much love. But I smiled and walked in, carrying my bags toward the kitchen, trying to ignore the way Sarah discreetly sighed behind me. The house looked beautiful, decorated with a massive tree full of LED lights and golden ornaments. The living room furniture, that Italian leather sofa set that I had also helped pay for when David urgently needed to improve the image of his house for clients, gleamed under the holiday lights. On the dining room table, the fine crystal glassware reflected the lit candles, creating a perfect postcard atmosphere. My 3 grandchildren were playing in the living room. Matthew, 12, obsessed with his latest model phone. Isabella, 10, watching videos on her tablet. And little Sam, 7, running around with a remote control car I recognized as one of the expensive gifts I had given them last year. "Kids, come say hello to Grandma," I called out happily, spreading my arms, waiting for their hugs. Matthew barely looked up from his phone. "Hi, Grandma," he mumbled without moving from the sofa. Isabella didn't even turn around, completely absorbed in her screen. Only Sam approached, but when I hugged him, he wrinkled his nose and said loudly, "Grandma, why does that smell so strong?" His comment drew muffled laughter from David, who had appeared in the living room dressed in a new shirt that looked like it cost more than I spent on clothing in 6 months. "That's the roast, son," David said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You know how your grandma is, always cooking things with strong smells." The phrase cut through me like a dagger. "You know how your grandma is," as if I were a bothersome eccentricity, a family quirk that had to be tolerated during the holidays. I sat down on the corner of the sofa, watching my family move around me as if I were part of the furniture. No one asked how I had been. No one noticed that I had lost weight, because lately I hadn't had the appetite to eat alone. No one realized I had come by taxi because I no longer felt safe driving at night in the city. Dinner time arrived and everyone headed to the dining room. I followed them, expecting my usual spot at the head of the table, the seat I had occupied since we were a happy family, when Robert was still alive and our Christmases were full of genuine joy. But when I reached the dining room, I froze. In my chair was a gleaming trash can, a new chrome metal bin with a label that read, "For Mom's Special Garbage." Silence stretched for a few eternal seconds. Then Sarah burst out laughing. "That's brilliant! Aren't we creative? Did you see your special gift, Eleanor?" David joined the laughter, clapping the table with satisfaction. "Since you're always saying we throw out your affection, Mom, well, we got you the perfect place to keep it." My grandchildren also laughed, not truly understanding the cruelty of what was happening, but caught up in the adults' hilarity. I stood there, the bags of gifts still in my hands, looking at that bin shimmering under the chandelier, like a metallic mockery of all my years of unconditional love. "It's a joke, Mom," David said, but his smile held something malicious. "Don't take it so seriously. You always overreact to everything." Those exact words. The same ones Robert used to say when I complained about his indifference, when I cried over his coldness, when I asked him for a little more consideration in our last years together. "You always overreact to everything." And at that moment, something inside me broke forever. I sat on a plastic chair brought from the kitchen, separated from the main table as if I were a second-class guest in my own family. The clinking of cutlery against plates mixed with conversations that seemed deliberately directed to exclude me. They talked about their new jobs, the vacations they were planning in Cabo, the private school where they wanted to enroll Sam next year. "And how are you going to pay for that tuition, David?" I asked with genuine curiosity, knowing his import business barely covered the extravagant lifestyle they led. "We'll see, Mom. You always come up with those uncomfortable questions," he replied without looking at me, cutting a piece of the gourmet turkey they had bought from a high-end specialty market. Sarah chuckled. "Eleanor, don't worry about our money. David is very good at managing investments and capital. Besides, we have other resources." I remained silent, but my eyes instinctively went to the living room, to the furniture I had financed, to the giant screen TV I had paid for when Isabella turned 8 because all her friends had one just like it. I calculated mentally. Between the down payment on the house, the furniture, the appliances, the family emergencies, and the expensive gifts for my grandchildren, I had invested more than $120,000 in that family over the last 5 years. $120,000 they never truly thanked me for, never recognized as the sacrifices of a mother who worked 12-hour shifts until she was 65 just to help them. "Grandma, did you buy us presents this year?" Isabella asked, finally pulling her gaze from the tablet. "Of course, my love," I replied, pointing to the colorful bags I had left by the entrance. "They're over there. Can we open them now?" Matthew insisted. "After dinner," David intervened with authority. "First, we have to do things properly." But I knew doing things properly didn't include asking how I felt eating away from my family, or thanking me for the roast I had prepared since dawn, or even commenting that I looked different, thinner, sadder. As dinner went on, the conversations became crueler. as if my presence authorized them to vent frustrations they had been holding all year. "Mom, have you found a boyfriend yet?" David asked with a mocking smile. "It's been 4 years since Dad died. You can't stay alone forever." "David, please," I murmured, feeling the heat rise to my cheeks. "No, seriously. You should look for someone. That way you wouldn't be bothering us so much," he continued. And Sarah laughed so hard she choked on her wine. "David," I protested, but my voice came out so weak it was barely heard over their laughter. "It's true, Eleanor," Sarah added, wiping away tears of laughter. "You need your own life. You can't depend on us for companionship." Depend on them? I, who had worked since I was 18, who had raised 3 children virtually alone while Robert traveled for work, who had built my wealth with discipline and sacrifice, who had bought my properties when they didn't even know what it was to pay rent. "I don't depend on you," I finally said, with a voice that sounded firmer than I felt. "Really?" David raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you always here, always wanting us to invite you, always asking what we're doing?" "Because you are my family," I replied, and the words came out broken. "Yes, but family doesn't mean you have to be on top of us all the time," David continued. And I noticed he had been drinking more wine than usual. "Sarah and I need our space. The kids need to grow up without their grandma supervising their every move." Every word was a stab. Supervising? When had I supervised anything? If anything, I had been too permissive, too generous, too willing to give without asking for anything in return. "Besides," Sarah added with a smile that was meant to be maternal but felt condescending, "you're getting older, Eleanor. You should think about moving to a smaller place, something easier to maintain. There are some lovely assisted living facilities out in Lancaster." Assisted living. The word echoed in my head like a death sentence. They wanted to get rid of me, send me to a place where I could be well cared for, and above all, far from their perfect lives. "I don't need assisted living," I said, trying to maintain my dignity. "I'm perfectly fine in my apartment." "But that apartment is too big for you alone," David insisted. "And it's in an expensive area. You could sell it, invest that money in something more profitable." There it was. The real reason for this whole conversation. My apartment in Los Feliz, now worth 3 times what I had paid for it 20 years ago. My small real estate fortune that tempted them like honey to flies. "My assets are mine," I said with a firmness that surprised even me. "No one's saying they're not," David replied, but his tone had become calculated. "I'm just saying you should be smarter with your capital. We could help you manage your investments better." Sarah nodded with feigned enthusiasm. "Yes, Eleanor. David has been studying a lot about the stock market and cryptocurrencies. He could grow your net worth." I remembered the times David had come to ask me for loans, the emergencies that always arose when he needed working capital, the negative cash flows of his business that I had covered with my savings. And now they wanted to manage my fortune? "I don't need help with my money," I replied. "Oh, Mom, don't be so proud," David sighed dramatically. "We just want what's best for you." The children had finished dinner and ran to open their gifts. Shouts of joy momentarily filled the house when they saw the expensive toys I had bought them. A new bike for Sam, a laptop for Matthew, a professional art kit for Isabella. Every gift had been chosen with care, thinking of their specific tastes, of what would make them happy. "This is awesome, Grandma!" Sam shouted, hugging me for the first time all night. For a moment, I felt it was all worth it. Their smiles, their spontaneous hugs, the genuine joy on their faces as they unwrapped each present. But the happiness was short-lived. "Kids, come here," Sarah called them. "Let's put the presents in your room so they don't get damaged." And just like that, in less than 5 minutes, the gifts for which I had spent 2 months' rent disappeared up the stairs, carried by children who had already lost interest now that the initial novelty had passed. I was left alone in the living room, surrounded by crumpled wrapping paper and empty bags. David and Sarah had gone to the kitchen to prepare coffee, speaking in low voices about things they clearly didn't want me to hear. I walked toward the bathroom, needing a moment of privacy to process everything that had happened. As I passed the kitchen, I overheard fragments of their conversation. "She's getting more stubborn every year. That apartment is worth a fortune. We could convince her to sign a power of attorney. I stopped dead. A power of attorney? Why did they want me to give them power over my assets? I continued walking toward the bathroom, but their words had chilled me to the bone. In the mirror, I saw myself as I really was. A 68-year-old woman, tired, alone, being manipulated by the family I had raised and supported for decades. For the first time in 4 years, since Robert's death, I truly cried. Not the silent tears of nightly loneliness, but deep sobs that came from a place inside me that had been sealed for a long time. When I returned to the living room, they had already served coffee in the fine china cups that I had also paid for. No one asked if I wanted coffee. No one noticed my swollen eyes. "Well, Mom," David said, consulting his gold watch, "I think it's time for you to go. We have early plans tomorrow." It was barely 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve. The taxi took me back to my apartment on Larchmont Boulevard in a silence that felt more honest than the entire dinner conversation. The driver, an elderly man with a grizzled mustache, looked at me in the rearview mirror and murmured, "Was the family gathering nice, ma'am?" "Yes," I lied automatically, because after 40 years of marriage and 20 years of widowhood, I had learned that some truths were too painful to share with strangers. When I arrived at my building, I climbed the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, each step heavier than the last. The keys trembled in my hands as I opened the door, and when I finally entered, the silence of my home hit me like a cold slap. Everything was exactly as I had left it that morning. The dining room table still had crumbs from the toast I had eaten for breakfast. The half-finished coffee cup rested next to the newspaper I hadn't finished reading. My robe hung from the back of the chair like a ghost of the routine I had abandoned to seek love where it no longer existed. I sat on my favorite sofa, the sky blue fabric one I had bought when Robert died because I needed something new, something that didn't have memories of him embedded in every fiber. I closed my eyes and tried to process what had happened. The trash can was still present in my mind like a burnt image on my retina. It hadn't just been a cruel joke. It had been a declaration. A clear message of what they thought of me, of my place in their lives, of the value they gave to everything I had done for them. I got up and walked to the drawer where I kept all the receipts and documents for the loans I had given David. For years, I had kept every receipt, every bank transfer, every check, with the innocent hope that one day he would keep his word and return even a part of that money. I spread all the papers on the dining table as if I were a detective reviewing evidence of a crime. There they were. The transfer receipt for 50 Irzomwer, FORTHEDOWN, PAYMENTONTHEHEHOUSEI, THEINVOICEFORTHELIVINGROOMFURNITUREFORMI 50,000 tied for the down payment on the house, the invoice for the living room furniture for and 15,000, the receipt for the TV, the washer, the 3 emergency loans I had given when his business was going through hard times. I added everything up on my old calculator, the one I had used for decades to manage my money with the precision of someone who had never had the luxury of being financially irresponsible. The total left me breathless. $120,000. The value of a small property in a decent area of the city, the savings of a lifetime, the yields of my most conservative investments, the capital I had accumulated working double shifts for 20 years. And it had all disappeared into the hands of a son who tonight had treated me like trash. I took my phone and dialed the number of my younger daughter, Susan, who lived in Chicago with her husband and 2 children. Maybe she would be different, I thought. Maybe in her I would find the understanding David had denied me. "Mom," Susan answered on the 5th ring, her voice sleepy. "What's wrong? It's almost 11 at night." "Honey, I'm sorry to call so late. I just wanted to tell you about the dinner at David's house." "Oh, Mom," Susan sighed with that tired tone I knew so well. The same one David used when I talked to them. "Can't you tell me tomorrow? The kids just fell asleep and we have to get up early." "It's just that it was something very strange, Susan. They put a trash can in place of my chair and—" "A trash can?" Susan laughed. "Oh, Mom, I'm sure it was a joke. David has always had that weird sense of humor. Don't take it so seriously." There was that cursed phrase again. Don't take it so seriously. "But honey, they were also talking about me going to assisted living." "Mom, listen to me." Susan's voice became more serious. but not in the protective way I expected. "You're getting older. It's normal for us kids to worry about your safety. Assisted living facilities aren't like they used to be. Some of them are quite nice." I felt as if cold water had been thrown on me. My own daughter, the child I had cared for when she had pneumonia at age 5, the teenager for whom I had paid piano and French lessons because she dreamed of being international, the young woman I had helped with college tuition, agreed with getting rid of me. "Susan, I don't need assisted living. I'm perfectly fine here in my house. But Mom, that apartment is too big for you, and it's in an expensive area you don't need. You could sell it and buy something smaller, more practical." The same old tune. My apartment, my net worth, my assets. As if my value as a human being were directly related to the price per square foot of my property. "Honey, do you need money too?" I asked directly, because I was tired of beating around the bush. Susan was silent for a few seconds that were too long. "It's not that we need it, Mom, but, well, Rodrigo lost his job last month. The company he worked for went bankrupt. And, well, the kids' expenses, the tuition, the mortgage, everything is so expensive." There was the truth. Rodrigo had lost his job, and now they saw in me the solution to their financial problems, exactly like David. "And that's why you think I should go to assisted living." "It's not that, Mom. It's just that if you sold the apartment, you could help us out a little, and with what's left, you could live comfortably in a place more appropriate for your age." A place more appropriate for my age, as if being older were a disease that required isolation from the real world. "Susan, I bought that apartment with my own labor. It is mine." "Yes, Mom. No one is saying it isn't. I'm just saying that, well, we're your family. If you have resources and we need help, it's natural that—" "Natural?" I interrupted her, feeling indignation begin to replace sadness. "Natural that because I have saved money, you automatically have a right to it. Don't misunderstand me, Mom. It's not that we have a right. It's logical. When you die, you're going to leave it to us anyway. So why not help us out now, when we actually need it?" Susan's words were like a punch to the stomach. "When you die." She spoke of my death as if it were a pending commercial transaction, as if my only purpose in life were to accumulate assets to hand over to them when I finally had the courtesy to disappear. "Susan, I am not going to die soon, and while I am alive, my money is mine." "Oh, Mom, don't be selfish. Blood is thicker than water. We take care of you. We love you. We're here for you. You take care of me?" I finally exploded. "When was the last time you visited me, Susan? When was the last time you called me just to know how I was doing, without needing something?" Another guilty silence. "Mom, I live in Chicago. It's not that easy. David lives 30 minutes from my house and he never visits me either unless he needs something." "Well, Mom, it's just, you're sometimes very demanding. You always want us to be with you. You always call us, I always love you." I finished the sentence for her. "That's my crime, loving my children. Don't overreact, Mom. No one is saying we don't love you. It's just that you need to understand that we have our own lives." I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. I stayed seated in the darkness of my living room, surrounded by the papers documenting years of unreciprocated generosity, hearing the noise of the cars passing on Larchmont Boulevard, the street where I had lived for 2 decades, building what I thought was a fortune for my old age, and turned out to be merely a bank account my children saw as their advance inheritance. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be completely alone in the world. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until the sky began to lighten over the Los Feliz buildings, watching the first lights of dawn filter through my bedroom curtains. My eyes were swollen from crying, but for the first time in years, the tears were not just of sadness. There was something else, something growing in my chest like a small flame, indignation. I got up at 6 in the morning and brewed a strong cup of coffee. While waiting for the water to boil, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to confront them, not aggressively, but with the dignity they had denied me. I was going to ask them directly what they expected of me, what their true intentions were. I dialed David's number at 8, knowing he would already be awake because he always boasted about his morning exercise and meditation routines. "Mom, so early?" "David, I need to talk to you. Can I come over to your house? Well, we had plans to go out with the kids today. Can it be over the phone? I prefer it in person. He sighed with that exasperation I knew so well. Fine, but make it quick because we have to be at the Grove by noon. The Grove? They were probably going to some expensive commercial center to spend money they didn't have, financed by debts they hoped I would cover. I arrived at their house an hour later, but this time I didn't bring gifts, or food, or the forced smile I had used for years to buy moments of family peace. I carried a folder with all the loan documents I had given him, organized chronologically as evidence of a crime. Sarah opened the door to me in pajamas, looking annoyed. Eleanor, seriously, couldn't you have called earlier? The kids are barely getting up. Good morning, Sarah. I came to speak with David about family affairs. The word affairs seemed to make her nervous, as if she had detected something different in my tone. David appeared in the living room 5 minutes later, still in gym clothes, with that attitude of a busy man who doesn't have time for his elderly mother's nonsense. What's wrong, Mom? Everything okay? I sat on the sofa I had paid for and placed the folder on the coffee table I had also financed. David, I want you to explain something to me. Last night you said I depend on you emotionally, but when I check my accounts, I discover something very interesting. I opened the folder and took out the first document. August 2019. I transferred $50,000 to you for the down payment on this house. Do you remember? David blinked several times, clearly uncomfortable. Yes, but that was a loan, Mom. I told you I was going to pay you back. When? When the business situation improves. I took out the next document. December 2019, $15,000 for the living room furniture. Also a loan, according to you. Mom, where are you going with this? February 2020, $10,000 for the TV and appliances. David stood up, starting to show signs of irritation. Are you keeping a tally of what you've done for us? Seriously? Yes, David. I'm keeping a tally, because apparently I'm the only one in this family who remembers these numbers. Sarah approached, clearly alarmed by the turn of the conversation. Eleanor, I don't understand why you're doing this. We never asked you to give us that money. I looked her directly in the eyes. Really, Sarah? You never asked me for anything? I took out my phone and scrolled through the WhatsApp messages I had saved for years. Message from David, August 15th, 2019. Mom, I urgently need the down payment for the house. If I don't pay this week, we lose everything. Please help me. I swear I'll pay you back in 6 months. David turned red. Mom, that was an emergency? Message from Sarah, December 23rd, 2019. Eleanor, the kids are going to have a very sad Christmas if we can't buy the gifts they expect. Could you help us? It's just a loan. Sarah lowered her gaze. There are still more messages, I continued, navigating my phone. Medical emergencies that turned out to be cosmetic surgeries, business problems that were always solved with my money, children's expenses that could never wait until you had your own capital. Enough! David shouted. What do you want? Us to apologize? Beg you? You wanted to give us that money. I wanted to help my family when I thought they had real problems. I didn't know I was financing a lifestyle you can't afford. And so what if we can't afford it? Sarah stood up, hands on her hips. What are you going to do with all that money? Take it to your grave? There it was again. Death as an economic argument. Sarah, while I am alive, my money is mine, and I can do whatever I please with it. But we're your family, David insisted, sitting on the edge of the sofa. When you're no longer here, that net worth is going to be ours anyway. It's logical that you help us now. Logical according to whom? According to nature, Mom. Parents work to leave something to their children. I was silent for a moment, processing their words. According to them, my purpose in life was to accumulate wealth to transfer it to them when I died. It didn't matter if I wanted to travel, if I had pending dreams, if I needed that money for my own old age. My function was to be a human piggy bank. And what if I wanted to use my money for myself? David laughed scornfully. For what, Mom? At your age, what are you going to do? Go on a trip? Buy new clothes? What for? Maybe I will go on a trip. Maybe I will buy new clothes. Maybe I will invest in something that makes me happy. Oh, Mom, don't be ridiculous. Sarah laughed too. You don't start a new life at 68. Their laughter hurt more than their words. To them, I was already a finished woman, without the right to my own desires, with no future beyond being their silent benefactor. At that moment, Matthew came down the stairs and, seeing me, said, "Grandma, did you come to bring us more presents?" My grandson's innocent question was like a revelation. To him, I was just the woman who showed up with gifts, not a grandmother with stories to tell, not a person with interesting experiences, not someone from whom he could learn something, just a source of presents. "No, sweetheart, I didn't bring anything this time." "Then why did you come?" he asked, with the cruel honesty of children. David gently chastised him, but I saw that deep down, he was asking the same question. If I didn't come to give money, gifts, or services, why was I here? "I came to say goodbye," I finally said, surprised by my own answer. "Say goodbye?" David frowned. "Are you going somewhere?" "Yes. I'm going to find myself." They looked at each other as if I had said something completely absurd. "Mom, are you feeling well?" Sarah asked condescendingly. "You're not having some kind of 60s crisis, are you?" 60s crisis. Another way to invalidate any decision I might make, any change I might want to make in my life. I got up from the sofa, took my folder, and walked toward the door. "David, Sarah, I want you to know something very clearly. Starting today, there will be no more loans. There will be no more emergencies that I resolve. There will be no more transfers to your accounts." "Mom, you can't be serious." David stood up, alarmed. "I am completely serious. And one more thing. I will not sell my apartment. I will not go to any assisted living facility. And I will not give you power of attorney over my assets." "But Mom!" Sarah shouted. "You can't abandon your family like this." I stopped at the door and looked at them one last time. "I'm not abandoning you. You abandoned me a long time ago. I just only realized it now." I closed the door softly without slamming it, because I was no longer angry. I only had a crystal-clear certainty about what I had to do next. The following Monday, I went to the bank. For the first time in years, I walked the streets of Los Feliz feeling something I had forgotten existed: determination. Every step on the cracked sidewalks resonated with a new firmness, as if I had recovered a piece of myself that had been dormant for decades. The bank manager, Mr. Harrison, greeted me with the professional courtesy he reserved for clients with important accounts. He had been managing my investments for years and knew my conservative profile, my history of constant savings, my impeccable financial discipline. "Mrs. Eleanor, how can I help you today?" "I want to make some changes to my accounts," I told him, taking out a list I had prepared that morning while drinking my coffee. "I need to cancel all automatic transfers I have authorized to third parties." Mr. Harrison reviewed my file on his computer, frowning slightly. "I see you have monthly transfers authorized to Mr. David Miller's account and sporadic ones to Mrs. Susan Reynolds. Are you sure you want to cancel them?" "Completely sure." "May I ask the reason?" "It's important for us to understand the reasons for any significant change in the management of your net worth." I looked him directly in the eyes. "Because my money is mine, Mr. Harrison, and I want to decide for myself when, how, and to whom I give it." He nodded with that understanding that only people who have seen many complicated family stories pass through their office have. "Of course, Mrs. Eleanor. I would also like to suggest that you change the access codes to your online accounts for security." "Does anyone else have access to my accounts?" "Well, according to our records, Mr. David Miller has authorization as a secondary beneficiary to consult movements. It's a common configuration in families." I felt a chill. David could see all my bank movements, knew exactly how much money I had, when I made withdrawals, when I received my yields from the properties I rented. "I want you to remove that authorization immediately." "Of course." "Do you also want to modify the beneficiaries of your insurance policies and investment accounts?" It was a question I hadn't considered, but which suddenly seemed crucial. "What do you recommend?" "Well, ma'am, you have a considerable net worth. Your 3 properties are now valued at approximately $1.5 million. Your investment funds total another $200,000, and you have cash reserves of about $50,000. It's important that you have a clear plan for the destination of these assets. Nearly $1.8 million in total assets. Hearing the total figure of my net worth struck me. For years, I had thought of my assets in fragments: the apartment, the rents, the savings. But the total sum represented a fortune I had built dollar by dollar, sacrifice by sacrifice. Mr. Harrison, what are my options? You can create a trust, you can modify your will, you can even consider lifetime donations to charitable institutions if that is your wish. Donations to charitable institutions. The idea resonated with me in an unexpected way. Can you give me information about those options? Of course. We have a specialized wealth planning department that can advise you. I left the bank with a feeling of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I had real control over my life, over my future, over the decisions that directly affected me. When I arrived at my apartment, I found 12 missed calls from David and 5 WhatsApp messages from Susan. The messages were predictable: pleas, reproaches, attempts at emotional manipulation. Mom, David told me what happened. You can't be serious. How can you be so cruel to your own family? We're very worried about you. You're not having some kind of mental health issue, are you? Mental health issue. Of course. A 68-year-old woman who decided to manage her own money obviously had to be crazy. I didn't answer them. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the wine I had been saving for special occasions and sat on my balcony overlooking Larchmont Boulevard. I had lived in that apartment for 20 years, but I had never taken the time to truly observe the life passing by my window. There were young couples strolling hand in hand, elderly gentlemen playing dominoes in the shade of the trees, families with small children running around the fountain. Real, everyday, simple life. People who didn't know me, who didn't have expectations about my money, who didn't see me as a resource. The phone rang. It was David. Mom, answer, please. We need to talk. I let it ring until it cut off. It rang again immediately. This time, I answered. Hello, David. Mom, finally. Listen to me. What happened yesterday was a misunderstanding. I think we expressed ourselves badly. David, there was no misunderstanding. You were very clear about what you expect from me. But Mom, we're family. You can't just cut off all communication like this. I'm not cutting off communication. I'm setting boundaries. Boundaries? With your own family? Especially with my own family. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for several seconds. Mom, you know what? I think you do need professional help. This isn't you. You've always been generous. You've always wanted what's best for us. I still want what's best for you, David, but I'm no longer going to buy it with my money. You weren't buying it. We truly love you. Really. When was the last time you visited me without needing something? When was the last time you asked me how I'm feeling, what I'm reading, what plans I have for my life? Another silence. Well, we're always busy, but that doesn't mean... David, tell me something. Do you know what my favorite food is? Your favorite food? Well, the roast you make. It's paella. I've loved paella ever since your father took me to a Spanish restaurant on our first anniversary, but I never told you because you always insisted I cook the roast for family gatherings. Mom, what does that have to do with anything? Do you know what my dream is? Something I've always wanted to do? I don't know, Mom. We never talked about those things. Exactly. We never talked about those things. You've never asked yourself what Eleanor wants, what Eleanor dreams of, what Eleanor needs. You only ask yourself what Eleanor can give you. That's not true. David, yesterday you told me that at my age I can't start a new life. Guess what? I'm going to prove you wrong. What are you going to do? I'm going to live, truly live, for the first time in decades. Mom, please don't make decisions you might regret. The only decision I regret is taking so long to make it. I hung up the phone and turned it off completely. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Without the weight of family expectations, without the constant guilt of not giving enough, without the fear of disappointing people who had already disappointed me. I woke up at 6 in the morning with an energy I hadn't felt since my youth. I bathed, dressed carefully, and for the first time in months, I put on makeup as if I were going somewhere important. Because I was going somewhere important. To begin my new life. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and walked out onto the street. The morning air of Los Angeles greeted me with that freshness that only exists before the city fully wakes up. I walked to the Pershing Square station and got on the metro heading downtown. Something I hadn't done in years. I had an appointment with the life I had been putting off for too long. My first stop was a travel agency near the coast in Santa Monica. I hadn't set foot in one for years, not since Robert and I planned our annual vacations to Hawaii. The young woman behind the counter, about 25 with a professional smile, greeted me with curiosity when I told her what I wanted. "I want to see Spain," I told her without preamble. "How wonderful! Do you have any specific destinations in mind?" "I want to eat authentic paella in Valencia. I want to walk the streets of Seville. I want to see the museums in Madrid. And I want to take all the time in the world to do it." Her eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "How long are you thinking of staying? A month? Maybe 2? I'm not in a hurry to come back." As she prepared quotes and itineraries, I thought about how strange it felt to make decisions based solely on my own desires. For decades, every dollar I spent had to be justified. Was it necessary? Was it practical? Was there a more important family emergency? The complete package, including flights, 4-star hotels, and gourmet tours, would come out to approximately $15,000 for 2 months, the agent informed me. $15,000. Less than I had loaned David for his appliances. Perfect. "When can I go? How soon do you want to travel? Next week?" She laughed, thinking I was joking. But when she saw my serious expression, her smile faded. "Well, yes, it can be arranged. But we would need to expedite your passport, our visa process, and—" "Do it. Money is not a problem." I left the agency with a sense of euphoria I hadn't experienced in years. I had an appointment at the Spanish consulate for Wednesday, tentative reservations in hotels I had chosen for their sea view balconies and proximity to local markets, and an itinerary that included Andalusian cooking classes. My next stop was a boutique I had always admired from the outside but never dared to enter. The clothes were elegant, expensive, the kind worn by the women I saw in fine restaurants when Robert and I celebrated anniversaries in special places. The saleswoman, a woman my age with perfectly styled silver hair, greeted me without the disdain I had expected. "Good morning. How may I help you? I need a completely new wardrobe. I'm going to travel to Spain, and I want to look like the woman I truly am." I spent the next 2 hours trying on dresses, silk blouses, elegant pants, comfortable but sophisticated shoes. Every garment I put on made me feel more like the Eleanor who had existed before becoming her family's emotional piggy bank. "You look beautiful," the saleswoman told me as I admired myself in the mirror with a navy blue dress that enhanced my eyes. "May I ask what motivated you to renew your image?" I realized I had been living for others for so long that I forgot to live for myself. She smiled knowingly. "It's more common than you think. Many women our age come here with the same story. I spent $3,000 on clothes, shoes, and accessories, a sum that 6 months ago would have seemed like an unforgivable frivolity, but which now felt like an investment in my own dignity. As I left the boutique, my phone vibrated with messages. I had been ignoring them all morning, but curiosity got the better of me. Susan. "Mom, David told me you went to the bank. Please don't do anything crazy." David. "Mom, I spoke to Mr. Harrison. He said you canceled my authorizations." "Seriously?" Sarah. "Eleanor, the kids miss you." Matthew asked why Grandma is angry. "The kids miss me." "Right. They probably asked when their next presents would arrive." Instead of answering, I dialed a number I had saved months ago, that of a foundation that helped elderly women in vulnerable situations. I had seen their advertisement in the newspaper and had always wondered what it would be like to work on something like that. Golden Hope Foundation, good morning. "Good morning. My name is Eleanor Miller. I would like information about volunteer opportunities." "How wonderful. Do you have previous experience in social work?" "Not professionally, but I have life experience, and I recently realized that I have time and resources that I would like to invest in something meaningful." They gave me an appointment for Friday. As I wrote down the address, I thought about the irony. After years of my family telling me I was too old to start new things, I was embarking on adventures I hadn't allowed myself to dream of for decades. That afternoon, when I returned to my apartment laden with shopping bags and travel brochures, I found David waiting for me at the building entrance. He was leaning against his car, arms crossed and an expression that tried to be intimidating but only managed to look petulant. "Mom, we need to talk." "Hello, David. How did you know I would be here?" "Because you live here, Mom. It's your house. For now." The phrase visibly disconcerted him. "What do you mean, for now?" We went up to the apartment in silence. Once upstairs, David sat on the sofa as if he owned the place, with that attitude of a busy man accustomed to having his problems solved by others. "Mom, this has gotten out of hand. You can't be making such drastic decisions without consulting us." "Consult you? Why would I have to consult you about my own life?" "Because we are your family. Because we worry about you." I sat across from him, my shopping bag still at my feet. "David, tell me one thing. In all these years that you have been worrying about me, did you ever wonder if I was happy?" "Of course you're happy, Mom. You have a family that loves you. Am I happy? Or do you assume I should be happy because it suits you for me to be content?" He stayed silent, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "Because if you had truly worried about my happiness," I continued, "you would have noticed that I've been feeling lonely, ignored, and used for years." "No one is using you, Mom." "No? Then why do you only call me when you need money? Why do you only invite me over when you need me to look after the children? Why have you never, not once in the last 5 years, asked me what I want to do with my free time?" David ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "Fine. Maybe we haven't been perfect, but that doesn't mean you have to punish us like this." "I'm not punishing you. I'm freeing myself." "Freeing yourself from what?" "From the idea that my worth as a person depends on what I can give you. From the belief that my purpose in life is to keep you comfortable. From the illusion that you will value me if I continue to sacrifice myself." I got up and went to the kitchen to prepare a tea. David followed me. "Mom, I know we've made mistakes, but you can teach us. You can tell us what you want us to change." "David, I am not your teacher. It's not my job to educate you on how to treat your mother with respect. That should come naturally. But if you don't tell us what's wrong..." "Seriously? Do I need to explain to you that putting a trash can in my place at the Christmas table is wrong?" He blushed, finally remembering the humiliation they had put me through. That was a joke in poor taste. I admit it. It wasn't a joke, David. It was a message. A very clear message of what you think of me. And for that, you're going to destroy our family? I'm not destroying anything. I'm building something new. A life where I matter. David stood in my kitchen, watching me prepare my tea with the calmness of someone who had made an irreversible decision. "Mom, what's going to happen to us?" For the first time in the entire conversation, his voice sounded vulnerable, like the boy he once was. "That depends on you, David. You can learn to relate to me as human beings, or you can continue to see me as a resource. But I'm no longer going to pretend it's the same thing." David left without saying goodbye. I watched him from my window get into his car and drive off faster than necessary, as if running away from a conversation that had challenged everything he thought he knew about his mother. I stayed on the balcony, drinking my tea and watching the city lights begin to turn on with the sunset. For the first time in years, the silence in my apartment didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. On Friday, I arrived early at the Golden Hope Foundation. The building was modest, painted light yellow, with a small garden out front where red geraniums grew in clay pots. The director, a woman named Elaine Peters, greeted me in an office that smelled of coffee and had walls covered with photographs of older women smiling. "Eleanor, it's a pleasure to meet you. You mentioned on the phone that you're interested in volunteering." "That's right. I have time, I have energy, and I recently discovered that I have a perspective on what it means to be an older woman in a society that sees you as invisible." Elaine leaned forward, intrigued. "Can you tell me more about that perspective?" I told her my story. Not all of it, but the main points. The years of sacrifice. The Christmas Eve humiliation. The awakening that had led me to reclaim my life. Elaine listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding with the understanding of someone who had heard variations of that same story many times. "Eleanor, what you experienced is more common than you imagine. Many of the women who come here have been reduced to their function as caregivers, as givers, as the self-sacrificing ones. They lose their individual identity. And how do you help them? We remind them that they are whole people, with rights, with dreams, with value beyond what they can give others. And you, she looked me directly in the eyes, could be perfect for that job because you have just lived your own transformation. I was assigned to a program called The Second Act, where I would work with women between 60 and 80 who had come to the foundation after family crises similar to mine. My first peer would be Martha, a 75-year-old woman whose children had placed her in an assisted living facility against her will to sell her house and divide the money. She's very depressed, Elaine explained as we walked toward the activities room. She doesn't talk much. Her children convinced her she was a burden, that she had no right to manage her own net worth. I found Martha sitting by a window, staring into the garden with empty eyes. She was a small, thin woman, with white hair gathered in a perfect bun, and hands that trembled slightly in her lap. Martha, this is Eleanor. She's going to join you for some activities. Martha looked at me briefly and then returned her attention to the window. Hello, Martha. It's really nice to meet you. She didn't respond. I sat down beside her in silence, also looking at the garden. Sometimes silent company is more valuable than words, something I had learned during my own years of loneliness. After a few minutes, Martha murmured, My children say I'm crazy. Why do they say that? Because I didn't want to sell my house. Because I didn't want to go to assisted living. Because I cried when they took my things. Her voice was so small I had to lean in to hear her. How long did you live in that house? 42 years. I raised my 5 children there. My husband died there. I had my garden, my memories, my life. And they sold it. They said the money was for my care, but I was fine taking care of myself. I had my routine, my neighbors, my regular doctor. The story sounded painfully familiar. How much money was involved? About $250,000. A fortune for my kids, who have always struggled with their businesses. I remained silent, thinking about the parallels with my own situation. The only difference was that I had woken up before it was too late. Martha, what did you like to do in your house? Cook. I had a small backyard patch. I grew tomatoes, herbs, some rare vegetables. In the mornings, I'd drink coffee watching the sunrise from my kitchen. What else? I read a lot. I had a small library with romance novels and history books. On Sundays, I baked bread to give to the neighbors. As she spoke, Martha's eyes began to shine with a light that had been extinguished. You know what, Martha? All those things you loved to do didn't disappear because you no longer have your house. They are still inside you. But I can't do any of that here. Who says you can't? I looked at her with the same determination I had felt when I decided to change my own life. How about we start slowly? Would you like to help me start a small garden here in the foundation's backyard? For the first time since I met her, Martha smiled. I spent the next 2 weeks dividing my time between the preparations for my trip to Spain and my work with Martha. Every day I saw her a little more animated, a little more willing to believe that her life hadn't ended with the loss of her home. Meanwhile, my family had entered a stage that Elaine described as panic over the loss of control. David called me daily, alternating between pleas and reproaches. Susan had driven all the way from Chicago to talk to me personally. Sarah had started sending the children to knock on my door with drawings and letters that were obviously dictated by adults. Grandma, we miss you so much. Why don't you come to see us anymore? Said a letter from Isabella, written in handwriting too perfect for a 10-year-old. Grandma, I'm sorry if we hurt you. I promise to be good if you come back, said another from Sam. The manipulation through the children was what hurt me the most, but it was also what strengthened my resolve. They were using the love I felt for my grandchildren as an emotional weapon, and that confirmed that I had made the right decision. The Wednesday before my trip, David arrived at my apartment with Susan. I saw them from the window park in front of the building, talking intensely before getting out of the car. I knew they had come to make one last attempt to regain control over my life and my money. When they knocked on the door, I let them in, but this time I controlled the conversation. Hello, kids. To what do I owe this visit? Susan hugged me with theatrical effusiveness. Mom, we are so worried about you. David told me you're going to travel alone to Spain. Don't you think that's dangerous? Dangerous why? Because of my age? Well, yes. And because you don't know anyone there, and because anything could happen. Susan, I am 68, not 98. I can take perfectly good care of myself. David intervened with his most serious tone. Mom, we're also concerned about how you're handling your money. Spending $15,000 on a trip seems excessive. Excessive according to whom? According to any responsible person. That money you could invest better or save for emergencies. Or give it to you when you need it. They looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable, because I had verbalized what they were really thinking. That's not it, Mom, Susan said. We just want you to be prudent with your resources. I have been prudent for 70 years. I think I have earned the right to be a little imprudent. But, Mom, you have to think about the future, David insisted. About your old age, about the medical expenses you might have. David, I have nearly $1.8 million in total assets. I think I can afford a trip without jeopardizing my future. The figure silenced them. It was the first time they had heard the total amount of my net worth. 1.8 million? Susan murmured. Yes, 1.8 million that I earned working, saving, and wisely investing for 40 years. And that I am going to use as I please. Mom, David cleared his throat. With that amount of money, you could help us solve all our financial problems and still have enough left over to live comfortably. There it was. They had finally said it openly. And then what, David? After solving all your problems, what's left for me? You'll have our gratitude, our love. Your gratitude lasts until the next emergency. And your love seems to be directly proportional to my bank account. I got up and went to my bedroom. I returned with my packed suitcase. I'm leaving for Spain tomorrow. I'm going to be gone for 2 months. When I get back, we're going to define once and for all what kind of relationship we're going to have. What do you mean? Susan asked. I mean, you can choose. You can have me as a mother with all that implies regarding genuine respect and affection, or you can continue to see me as a walking inheritance, but you can't have both anymore. 6 months later, I returned from Spain transformed in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Not only had I eaten the best paella of my life on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, but I had learned to dance flamenco in Seville. I had made friends my age who were also traveling alone, and I had discovered that the world was full of adventures waiting for women who dared to claim them. In Valencia, I met Pilar, a 70-year-old Spanish widow who ran her own gastronomic tourism company. In Madrid, I had shared fascinating conversations with Carmen, another Carmen, a retiree who had started writing novels at 65 and had already published 3 books. These women had taught me that life after 60 wasn't an epilogue, but a new chapter full of possibilities. My Los Feliz apartment greeted me exactly as I had left it, but I was a completely different person. I had shorter, stylish hair, a cut I had adopted in Barcelona that made me feel more modern. My skin had the soft tan of the Mediterranean sun, and in my eyes there was a light that didn't exist before I left. The first call I made was to the Golden Hope Foundation. Elaine greeted me with a huge smile. Eleanor, you looked good in the pictures you sent, but in person, you are radiant. I feel radiant, Elaine. How is Martha? You have to see her. She has completely changed since she started the garden project. Now she even gives cooking classes to the other ladies. I found Martha in the garden, supervising 3 other women planting basil in clay pots. She wore a colorful apron and a straw hat, and her face radiated a vitality that hadn't been there when I met her. Eleanor, you're back! She ran toward me with a surprising burst of energy. Martha, you look wonderful. What is all this? It's our horticulture therapy program. I manage it, she said proudly. Elaine suggested I coordinate it after seeing how well the first patch worked with you. She showed me the rows of plants, the small greenhouse they had built, the composting area maintained by the volunteers. It was a modest but thriving garden, full of life and color. And your children? Her expression briefly saddened. They keep insisting I return to the assisted living facility. They say this place is inadequate for someone my age. But I no longer care what they say. Here, I have purpose. I have friends. I have a life worth living. That afternoon, Elaine proposed something I hadn't expected. Eleanor, we've received a significant donation to expand our programs. We need someone to direct the area of social reintegration for older women, someone who understands the process from the inside. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a mission. It would be volunteer work, but you could impact the lives of hundreds of women going through the same thing you did. I didn't need to think much. I had found my calling. My first week back, my phone rang constantly. David, Susan, Sarah, even my grandchildren had tried to contact me. I decided it was time to have a final conversation and invited them all to eat at my apartment on Sunday. I prepared paella. Not the prime rib roast, not the holiday ham, not any of the dishes that had defined my culinary identity for decades. Authentic paella with saffron I had brought from Spain, following the recipe I had learned from a Valencian grandmother in a market in Sativa. They arrived promptly, clearly nervous. David brought flowers. Susan had bought expensive wine. Sarah carried an apology card signed by everyone. The children stayed near the door, as if unsure how to approach this new version of their grandmother. It smells different, Matthew said, sniffing the air. It's paella, my favorite dish. Since when? Isabella asked. Always. I just never made it for you before. We sat down at the table. Everyone in normal chairs, no one separated, no one humiliated. But the dynamic was completely different. I was no longer the anxious, people-pleasing older woman they had known for years. Mom, you look different, Susan said cautiously. I feel different. The trip did you good, David admitted. The trip saved my life. During the meal, I told them a few anecdotes from Spain. But I didn't tell them about my new friends, the deep conversations I had, how liberated I had felt being simply Eleanor, not someone's mother or someone's grandmother. After dessert, Sam timidly approached. Grandma, are you not mad at us anymore? The question broke my heart because it came from a genuine place, without adult manipulation. I'm not mad, sweetheart. I'm different. I'm learning to love myself as much as I love you. Does that mean you won't buy us presents anymore? Matthew asked with the brutal honesty of children. It means the gifts I give you will be because I want to give them to you, not because I feel I have to buy your affection. David intervened, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Mom, we know we made mistakes. We want to make amends. How? Well, we could visit you more often, call you more, include you more in our plans. And what if I no longer want to be included in your plans? The question disconcerted them. What do you mean? Susan asked. I mean, I have built my own life. I have my own plans, my own friends, my own projects. I am no longer going to be available every time you need me. But you're our mother, David protested. I am your mother, but I am also Eleanor, and Eleanor has a life worth living independently of you. Sarah, who had been silent throughout the meal, finally spoke. Eleanor, what can we do to repair our relationship? You can start by treating me like a complete human being, not a resource. You can be interested in my life without needing something in return. You can respect my decisions even if you don't understand them. And if we do? David asked finally. Will things go back to how they were? No, things will never go back to how they were. Before, I had no boundaries. Now I do. What boundaries? Susan asked. No more loans without a repayment date. No more emergencies that magically get solved with my money. No more emotional guilt-tripping for living my own life. And definitely, no more humiliations disguised as jokes. I watched them process my words. Some seemed to understand. Others continued to resist the new reality. And if we accept those boundaries? David asked finally. Then we can try to build a new relationship. A relationship based on mutual respect, not economic dependence. Susan wiped away a tear. We missed you, Mom. I missed you too. But I missed the family I thought I had, not the family I truly was. Before they left, Isabella hugged me and asked, Grandma, will you teach me how to make paella? It was the first time in years that one of my grandchildren had asked me for something that didn't cost money. Of course, my love. Next Saturday, if you like. That night after they left, I sat on my balcony with a glass of Spanish wine and reflected on the journey. I had lost a dysfunctional family and gained an authentic life. I had traded the security of being needed for the freedom of being valued. 6 months later, my relationship with my children was different but more honest. David had started visiting me without asking for money, although it was a slow process. Susan had started calling me to talk about her life, not just her problems. The grandchildren came to cook with me on Saturdays, and they were learning that time with Grandma could be valuable beyond material gifts. Sarah remained distant, but she was no longer cruel. She had accepted, grudgingly, that she could no longer manipulate me. And I had learned that it is never too late to save yourself. Have you ever lived through something similar? Do you know someone who sacrificed their own happiness for a family that didn't value them? Tell me in the comments if this story felt familiar to you. And if you liked this story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. This is a story that needs to reach all the people who believe it's too late to change their lives. Because it is never, ever too late to be reborn.